quiet mistake is stopping thousands of people from losing belly fat every single day. And the surprising part is this: it has nothing to do with how much they walk, how long they walk, or even how often they walk. Most people walk every day. Some even push themselves to be consistent, tracking steps, trying to stay active, believing they are doing everything right. Yet the one thing that actually controls whether their body burns fat or not is completely ignored. The truth is simple, but it is rarely explained in a way people understand. Walking itself is not the problem. The timing of that walk is the real trigger. And this one detail quietly decides whether your body burns sugar or starts breaking down stubborn belly fat for energy. Many people spend months walking after meals, in the afternoon or whenever they find time, and then feel frustrated when the mirror shows no real change. The body stays stuck, holding on to that fat, especially around the belly, because it is still using an easier fuel source that is always available. What most people don't realize is that the body is designed to choose the simplest energy first, and as long as that source is present, fat burning stays in the background. This is where things start to shift, because there is a specific state where your body is no longer running on recent food, a state where sugar levels drop, and the body is forced to switch to a different fuel. In that moment, a simple walk stops being just a routine habit and becomes a powerful metabolic signal. And this is the part almost no one talks about clearly. That stubborn belly fat people struggle with is not just about eating less or moving more. It is about creating the right internal condition where the body has no choice but to use stored fat. When that condition is missing, effort feels wasted. When that condition is present, even something as simple as walking starts to work in a completely different way. This is why two people can walk the same distance every day and get completely different results. One sees slow change or no change at all, while the other begins to notice their body slowly leaning out, especially in areas that usually resist fat loss. The difference is not effort, it is timing. And once this idea clicks, everything starts to make sense. In this video, you will understand exactly how fasted walking works, why your body behaves differently depending on when you walk, and how a small shift in timing can push your body into a fat burning mode that most people never reach. You will also learn why high effort is not always better, why slower movement can sometimes be more effective for fat loss, and how your body's energy system quietly decides what fuel to burn without you even noticing. There is also a deeper layer to this that many people overlook. Your body is constantly adapting to your habits. When you repeat the same pattern without understanding how it works, your body becomes efficient in a way that does not always help fat loss. But when you introduce the right condition at the right time, your body is forced to respond differently. That is when real change begins. This is not about extreme workouts or complicated plans. It is about understanding a basic principle that has been overlooked, simplified, or misunderstood for years. And once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to use walking in a smarter way, how to avoid the common mistakes that quietly block fat burning, and how to turn a simple daily habit into something that actually produces visible results over time. Stay with this till the end because the small details shared later can make the biggest difference in whether this works for you or not. And missing those details is exactly why most people never see results even when they stay consistent. Welcome to the channel where simple habits are explained in a way that actually makes sense, where small changes lead to real results, and where understanding your body becomes the key to transforming it. If you want more simple health truths that work with your body instead of against it, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. There is a point where effort starts to feel frustrating. not because nothing is being done, but because everything seems to be done and still nothing changes in the one place that matters the most. Belly fat has a different kind of resistance. It does not respond quickly, it does not disappear easily, and it often stays even when other parts of the body begin to look leaner. Many people reduce their food, cut down portions, avoid certain meals, and try to stay disciplined for weeks or even months, expecting that the body will slowly start letting go of that stubborn area. But the result feels slow or completely stuck. At the same time, they try to move more, add daily walks, increase steps, and stay active throughout the day, thinking that more movement will naturally lead to more fat loss. But something feels off. The effort is there, the intention is strong, the consistency is real, yet the outcome does not match the work being put in. This creates a quiet confusion because on the surface, everything looks correct. Eat less, move more, repeat daily, and results should follow. But the body does not always follow simple expectations. It follows patterns, signals, and internal conditions that most people never fully understand. This is where frustration slowly builds, not because people are lazy, but because they are doing what they believe is right without knowing what actually triggers change inside the body. Belly fat becomes the most visible reminder of that gap between effort and understanding. It stays there even when clothes start to fit better elsewhere. It becomes the one area that refuses to cooperate, and over time, it starts to feel like nothing works specifically for it. A very common pattern appears in daily routines. Walking is often done after meals, sometimes right after breakfast, sometimes after lunch, and sometimes in the evening after dinner. It feels logical because the body is already active after eating, and moving seems like the right thing to do. In other cases, walking happens randomly, squeezed into busy schedules, done whenever there is a free moment, without any specific timing or structure. It becomes just another task on the list, something to complete rather than something to understand. And because walking is simple and accessible, it is repeated consistently without questioning whether it is actually creating the desired effect. This is where a silent mistake continues day after day. The body responds differently depending on what is happening internally at the time of movement. But this difference is rarely noticed because it is not visible immediately. So the same pattern continues. Walk after eating, walk when convenient, walk when there is time, and expect that over time it will add up to fat loss. When it does not, the confusion deepens. It feels like something is missing, but it is not clear what that missing piece is. There is also an emotional side to this experience. It is not just about fat, it is about the feeling of trying and not seeing results where it matters most. It is about looking in the mirror and noticing that one area has not changed despite all the effort. It creates doubt, doubt in the method, doubt in the process, and sometimes even doubt in the body itself. People begin to question whether their metabolism is slow, whether their body is different, or whether they are doing something wrong without knowing what that mistake is. And then a simple question starts to repeat in the mind again and again. Why is nothing changing? This question does not come from lack of effort, it comes from lack of clarity. Because when effort is high and results are low, the mind looks for answers, but without the right information, it keeps repeating the same actions, expecting a different outcome. Over time, this cycle becomes exhausting, not physically, but mentally. It feels like being stuck in a loop where progress is always just out of reach. The body, however, is not working randomly. It is following very specific rules that are not always obvious. One of those rules is about energy. The body always prefers to use the easiest available fuel. When food is recently consumed, especially meals that contain carbohydrates, the body breaks them down into sugar and uses that as its primary energy source. This process happens automatically and efficiently. It does not require any conscious control. As long as this fuel is available, the body continues to use it because it is simple and immediate. This means that even during a walk, if the body has easy access to this energy, it will rely on it instead of tapping into stored fat. The movement is still happening, calories are still being used, but the source of that energy matters more than most people realize. When the source remains the same, the outcome remains limited. This is why walking after meals often feels active but does not always lead to noticeable fat loss in stubborn areas. Another layer of this pattern is intensity. Some people try to walk faster, push harder, or turn their walks into more intense sessions, thinking that more effort will force the body to burn more fat. While intensity has its place, it also changes how the body chooses fuel. Higher intensity often increases the demand for quick energy, which again pushes the body toward using sugar rather than fat. So, even though the effort feels stronger, the body may still avoid using stored fat because a faster fuel source is available. This creates a situation where more effort does not necessarily lead to better fat loss, especially when the internal conditions are not aligned. It becomes clear that it is not just about moving more or trying harder. It is about understanding when the body is ready to use a different type of fuel. This is where the shift begins to appear, not as a complicated method, but as a simple adjustment that changes everything. The real change does not come from walking more, it comes from walking at a time when the body is in a different state. A state where it does not have immediate access to recently consumed food, a state where sugar levels are lower and the body needs to find another way to produce energy. This is known as the fasted state. It sounds technical, but it is actually very simple. It means walking when the body has not eaten for several hours, usually in the morning before breakfast or after a longer gap without food. In this state, the body is no longer relying on fresh fuel from a recent meal. Instead, it begins to look inward for energy. This is the moment where something important happens. The body starts shifting its focus. Without easy access to sugar, it begins to tap into stored energy. And one of the largest energy reserves in the body is fat. This includes the fat stored around the belly, which is often the most resistant when conditions are not right. In a fasted state, the body is not forced in a harsh way, but guided naturally toward using this stored fuel. The walk itself does not change, the steps remain the same. The movement stays simple, but the internal response becomes completely different. This is why the same activity can produce different results depending on when it is done. It is not the action alone that matters, it is the condition in which the action takes place. There is also a subtle but powerful effect that builds over time. When the body is repeatedly exposed to this state and this type of movement, it becomes more efficient at using fat as fuel. This is not an instant switch, it is a gradual adaptation. The body learns, adjusts, and becomes better at accessing stored energy. This is why consistency matters, but consistency in the right condition matters even more. When the pattern is repeated correctly, the body begins to change how it responds. What once felt difficult becomes more natural. Energy levels stabilize, and the reliance on stored fat becomes more noticeable over time. This is not something that happens overnight, but it is something that builds steadily when the right approach is followed. Many people miss this entirely because they focus only on the visible actions. Walking, eating less, staying active, these are all important, but without understanding the internal environment, they do not always lead to the expected results. The body is not just responding to movement, it is responding to timing, energy availability, and metabolic signals that are constantly changing throughout the day. When these signals are aligned with the goal of fat loss, even simple actions become effective. When they are not aligned, even strong effort can feel wasted. This is why the idea of fasted walking stands out, not because it is extreme, but because it works with the body's natural behavior instead of against it. There is also a psychological shift that happens when this concept becomes clear. The frustration begins to fade because the reason behind the lack of results starts to make sense. It is no longer a mystery. It is no longer about guessing or trying random changes. It becomes a clear understanding of cause and effect. When the body has fuel available, it uses that fuel. When it does not, it looks for another source. This simple rule explains why timing changes everything. It explains why walking after meals feels active but may not reduce stubborn fat. It explains why walking in a fasted state creates a different outcome, even though the movement looks the same. And once this understanding settles in, the approach becomes more intentional. Every walk has a purpose. Every step is taken in a state that supports the goal rather than working against it. This clarity removes unnecessary complexity. There is no need for extreme routines or complicated plans. The focus shifts to doing simple things in the right way. Walking remains easy, accessible, and sustainable, but now it is supported by a deeper understanding of how the body works. The gap between effort and results begins to close, not because more is being done, but because what is being done is finally aligned with the body's natural processes. And this alignment is what creates real, visible change over time, especially in areas that once felt impossible to reduce. Inside the body, everything runs on energy, and that energy always comes from somewhere. There is no movement, no thought, no action without fuel. What most people never fully see is that the body is constantly choosing between two main fuel sources. And that choice quietly controls whether fat is being stored or burned. The first fuel is sugar, which comes from the food that is eaten during the day, especially meals that include carbohydrates. This sugar moves into the bloodstream and becomes the fastest, easiest source of energy the body can use. The second fuel is stored fat, which sits in different parts of the body, including the belly, waiting to be used when needed. Both fuels are always available, but the body does not use them equally at the same time. It follows a simple rule that shapes everything. It always prefers the easiest fuel first. Sugar is quick, simple, and ready to go, so the body naturally uses it before anything else. This means that most of the time, especially when meals are eaten regularly, the body is running on sugar without even thinking about stored fat. After eating, this process becomes even stronger. Food enters the system, sugar levels rise, and the body immediately shifts into a mode where it starts using that sugar for energy. This happens whether someone is sitting, walking, or even exercising. The body does not want to waste the fuel that is already available, so it burns it first. This is why a walk after a meal often feels comfortable and easy. The body has a fresh supply of energy, and it uses that energy smoothly. But at the same time, something important is happening in the background. Because sugar is available, the body has no reason to touch stored fat. It simply keeps using what is easiest. This continues as long as food keeps coming in regularly. Each meal adds more fuel, and the body keeps cycling through that fuel without needing to go deeper into its reserves. This creates a pattern where fat burning stays low, not because the body cannot burn fat, but because it does not need to. As hours pass without eating, the situation slowly begins to change. The sugar from the last meal starts to get used up. The body keeps running, keeps moving, keeps functioning, but the easy fuel begins to decrease. This does not happen instantly. It is a gradual shift. The body does not panic or stop, it simply adapts. As sugar levels drop, the body starts looking for another source of energy. This is where the second fuel begins to come into focus. Stored fat, which has been sitting quietly, now becomes relevant. The body is designed to use this fuel when needed. It is not a backup in a negative sense. It is a natural and powerful energy reserve. When the easier option is no longer available, the body turns to this reserve without hesitation. This is the key moment where the internal switch begins to happen. It is not visible from the outside. There is no sudden feeling or dramatic change that signals it clearly, but inside, the body starts shifting from using sugar to using fat. This is not a forced action. It is a natural response to the absence of immediate fuel. And once this shift begins, every movement the body makes starts to draw energy from a different source. Walking, standing, even basic activity starts to tap into stored fat. This includes the fat stored around the belly, which is often the most stubborn area because it is the last to be used when conditions are not right. But in this state, the body does not treat it differently. It becomes part of the available energy pool. And slowly, over time, as this state is repeated, that stored fat begins to reduce. The interesting part is that this process does not require extreme effort. It does not demand intense workouts or high levels of strain. It simply requires the right timing and the right condition. When the body is in this state, even simple movement becomes effective. And this is where walking begins to show its true value, because not all movement is equal when it comes to how the body uses fuel. The type of movement changes how energy is used, and understanding this difference explains why walking can sometimes be more effective than harder workouts when it comes to fat loss. High intensity workouts create a different demand inside the body. They require quick bursts of energy, fast reactions, and strong output. To support this, the body turns back to sugar because it is the fastest fuel available. Even if the body has access to stored fat, it prefers sugar during intense activity because it can be used immediately and efficiently. This means that during high intensity exercise, the body often relies heavily on sugar, even if the goal is to burn fat. This is not a problem in itself, but it shows that effort alone does not decide the fuel source. The type of activity plays a major role. Walking, on the other hand, creates a completely different environment inside the body. It is steady, controlled, and does not demand sudden bursts of energy. It allows the body to operate at a level where it does not need the fastest fuel. Instead, it can use a slower, more stable source of energy. This is where stored fat becomes ideal. During slow and steady movement, the body has enough time to break down fat and use it as fuel. It does not need to rush. It does not need immediate energy. It can stay in this state for longer periods, which means more time using stored fat. This is why walking, especially in a fasted state, creates such a powerful combination. The body is already in a condition where sugar is low and it is ready to use stored fat. When walking is added to this state, the body continues to rely on that fat for energy over an extended period. It does not switch back and forth quickly. It stays in a consistent mode where fat is the primary fuel. And because walking can be sustained for longer durations without exhaustion, this process continues without interruption. The result is a steady use of stored fat, including the fat around the belly. There is also a sense of ease that comes with this approach. It does not feel overwhelming or extreme. There is no need to push the body to its limits. The movement remains simple, natural, and repeatable. This makes it easier to stay consistent, which is one of the most important factors in any long-term change. When something feels too intense, it becomes difficult to maintain. But when it feels manageable, it becomes part of a daily routine without resistance. Walking fits into this perfectly because it does not require special preparation, recovery, or high levels of motivation. It can be done regularly without stress. Another important detail is how the body responds to stress itself. High intensity workouts, while effective in many ways, can sometimes increase stress levels inside the body. This can influence how energy is used and how fat is stored. Walking, being calm and steady, does not create the same level of stress. It allows the body to stay relaxed while still being active. This balance supports the use of fat as fuel without triggering unnecessary strain. Over time, this creates a more stable environment where the body becomes better at accessing and using stored fat. As this pattern continues, the body adapts. It becomes more efficient at switching to fat when needed. The process becomes smoother and the reliance on sugar decreases during these periods of movement. This does not mean sugar is no longer used. It simply means the body becomes flexible. It can use both fuels when needed, and it becomes better at choosing the right one based on the situation. This flexibility is what allows consistent progress, especially in areas that once seemed resistant. The simplicity of walking also removes many barriers. There is no need for complicated routines or strict schedules. The focus shifts to timing and consistency rather than intensity and complexity. This makes the process easier to follow and easier to maintain over time. And because the body responds to repeated patterns, this consistency begins to create visible change, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually and steadily. The kind of change that lasts because it is built on understanding rather than force. Each step taken in this state carries a different meaning. It is not just movement, it is a signal to the body to continue using stored energy. It is a continuation of a process that has already started internally. And because the body is already prepared to use fat, the movement supports that process instead of interrupting it. This alignment between internal state and external action is what makes the difference. It is not about doing more. It is about doing things in a way that matches how the body naturally works. Over time, this approach changes the relationship between effort and result. It removes the feeling of guessing and replaces it with clarity. It shows that small adjustments can create meaningful differences when they are based on understanding. And it highlights that the body is not resisting change, it is simply following its own rules. When those rules are respected, even simple habits become powerful. And walking, something that feels ordinary, becomes a tool that quietly supports fat loss in a way that feels natural, sustainable, and effective. The way this works in real life is simple, but the details matter more than most people expect. And when those details are followed correctly, the same walk that once felt ordinary begins to create a completely different effect inside the body. The first step is timing, because timing is what creates the condition where fat burning becomes possible. Walking in the morning before breakfast is one of the easiest ways to enter that state. After a full night of not eating, the body has already used a large portion of the available sugar, and it is naturally closer to switching towards stored energy. This makes the morning a powerful window where a simple walk can guide the body deeper into fat usage without needing anything extreme. There is no need for complicated preparation. Just wake up, allow the body to stay in that fasted condition, and begin moving. Another option is to walk later in the day after a longer gap without food, usually around 10 to 12 hours. This creates a similar environment where the body is no longer relying on recent meals. It is not about forcing long periods without eating. It is about allowing enough time for the body to use what it already has before asking it to move. This small shift changes everything because it aligns the timing of movement with the body's natural energy cycle. Once the timing is clear, the next step is duration. And this is where many people either do too little or try to do too much too soon. Starting with around 20 minutes is enough to begin activating the process. It allows the body to ease into movement without stress, especially if this is a new habit. There is no need to rush into long sessions from the beginning. What matters more is consistency and gradual progress. Over time, this duration can be extended to 30 minutes, then 40, and eventually around 45 minutes if it feels comfortable. This increase should feel natural, not forced. The body responds better when changes are gradual because it has time to adapt. Longer walks in a fasted state allow the body to stay in that fat burning mode for a longer period, which increases the overall effect. But pushing too hard or too long too early can create fatigue and make the routine harder to maintain. The goal is not to exhaust the body. The goal is to keep it in a steady state where it can continue using fat without interruption. The pace of the walk is another detail that quietly controls the outcome. It is not about speed. It is not about covering the maximum distance in the shortest time. It is about finding a comfortable, steady rhythm where the body feels active but not strained. Walking too slowly may not create enough demand for the body to use energy effectively, but walking too fast can shift the body back toward using sugar because the demand becomes higher. The ideal pace sits in the middle. It feels natural, smooth, and sustainable. Breathing stays controlled. The body feels light, not heavy. There is no sense of pushing to the limit. This type of movement allows the body to rely on stored fat without needing quick bursts of energy. It keeps the system stable and consistent, which is exactly what supports fat burning over time. There is also an important feeling to notice during the walk. The body should not feel exhausted. It should feel awake, slightly warm, and gently active. If the walk leaves a person feeling drained or overly tired, it is a sign that the intensity may be too high or the duration may be too long for the current level. The goal is to finish the walk feeling better than when it started, not worse. This creates a positive cycle where the body begins to associate the activity with energy and lightness rather than fatigue. Over time, this makes it easier to repeat the habit daily without resistance. When something feels manageable, it becomes part of a routine. When it feels overwhelming, it becomes something to avoid. This simple difference decides whether the habit continues or stops. As this routine begins to take shape, there are a few common mistakes that can quietly block the results even when everything else seems correct. One of the most common is eating before the walk, even if it is just a small snack. It may seem harmless, but even a small amount of food can raise sugar levels and shift the body back into using that easy fuel. This cancels the effect of being in a fasted state because the body immediately switches to burning what was just consumed. The walk may still feel active, but the internal condition has changed. The body no longer needs to use stored fat because it has a fresh supply of energy. This is why keeping the walk truly fasted is important. Water is fine, but adding food before the walk changes the entire process. Another mistake is turning the walk into a high intensity session. It can be tempting to walk faster, push harder, or try to increase the effort to get quicker results. But this often does the opposite of what is intended. When the pace becomes too fast, the body begins to demand quick energy again, which brings it back to using sugar. This reduces the time spent in fat burning mode and shifts the focus away from stored energy. It is a subtle change, but it has a clear impact over time. Staying at a moderate, steady pace keeps the body in the right zone where fat can be used consistently. It may not feel as intense, but it is more effective for this specific goal. Inconsistency is another factor that slows down progress. Doing this once or twice may feel good, but it does not create lasting change. The body adapts based on repeated patterns, not occasional effort. When the routine is followed regularly, the body begins to adjust its internal processes. It becomes better at switching to fat, better at sustaining energy without constant food intake, and more efficient overall. But when the routine is irregular, the body does not receive a clear signal to adapt. It remains in its usual pattern, and the results stay limited. Consistency does not mean perfection. It means showing up regularly, even if the duration or pace is not always the same. Over time, these repeated actions build momentum. As days turn into weeks, the results begin to show in subtle ways. This is not an instant transformation. The body does not change overnight. It responds gradually, adjusting to the new pattern and improving its ability to use fat as fuel. At first, the changes may not be visible in the mirror, but internally, the body is learning. It is becoming more efficient, more flexible, and more capable of accessing stored energy. This process takes time, but it builds a strong foundation. After a few weeks, small changes may begin to appear. The body may feel lighter. Energy levels may feel more stable, and slowly the stubborn areas that once felt resistant may begin to shift. The key transformation is not just physical, it is metabolic. The body becomes better at using fat, not just during walks, but throughout the day. This means that even outside of the walking routine, the body is more capable of managing energy in a balanced way. It does not rely as heavily on constant food intake. It becomes more adaptable. This flexibility supports long-term fat loss because it changes how the body behaves on a deeper level. Instead of constantly storing and holding on to fat, it begins to use it more freely when needed. The reduction in belly fat happens slowly, but it is steady. It does not disappear all at once. It reduces layer by layer as the body continues to use it as a fuel source. This gradual change is what makes it sustainable. There is no sudden drop followed by a quick return. Instead, there is a steady shift that reflects a real change in how the body functions. This type of progress may feel slow at times, but it is more reliable because it is built on a consistent pattern rather than a temporary push. Over time, the routine becomes easier, the body adjusts to walking in a fasted state, and what once felt unusual becomes normal. Energy levels during the walk improve, and the need for food immediately after waking may decrease. This is a sign that the body is adapting and becoming more comfortable with using stored energy. It is not about forcing the body to change, it is about giving it the right conditions and allowing it to respond naturally. Each walk becomes part of a larger process where small actions lead to meaningful results. The simplicity of this approach is what makes it effective. There are no complicated steps, no extreme measures, and no need for constant adjustment. It is based on understanding how the body works and aligning with that understanding. Walking at the right time, at the right pace, and with the right consistency creates a system that supports fat loss without adding unnecessary stress. And as the system continues, the changes become more noticeable, not just in appearance, but in how the body feels and functions every day. It's not about walking more. It's about walking at the right time. That one small shift changes everything. The same steps you take every day can either keep your body stuck or slowly unlock the fat it has been holding on to for years. And the difference is not effort, it is understanding. When you align your walk with the way your body actually works, the process becomes smoother, more natural, and far more effective. No extremes, no complicated routines, just a simple habit done the right way. Sometimes, one small change in timing can change how your body burns fat. It can turn an ordinary walk into something powerful. It can take you from feeling stuck to finally seeing progress, especially in the area that feels the hardest to change. And once you understand this, you stop guessing. You stop wasting effort. You start moving with purpose, knowing that every step is doing something real inside your body. If this helped you understand your body better, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more simple health truths that actually work, and share this with someone who is struggling with stubborn belly fat because sometimes the smallest insight can create the biggest change.